Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
So thank you. Let's talk about your book.
But first, can you do the thing that so we had a meeting one time for the film project, which we'll talk to you about, and we sat down, and the first thing Elgin's like, so they're interested in Elgin, so he's a star, and I'm sitting there kind of feeling like, why am I here? And he goes, do you remember it was...
Oh, Francesca's a motherfucking bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that went without saying. Francesca is a motherfucking bomb.
So I need that all.
I'm just trying to hang out in your wake.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all I'm trying to do. So speaking of you being the motherfucking bomb, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So basically, besides being an amazing, honest, truthful, great book, it's also a bunch of names, like a list of names of dudes that I now want to go kick their ass for being so clumsy and with your heart and with your soul. And so I'm glad that you found the secret man.
Greg.
So don't fuck it up, bro. No. Don't fuck it up.
Nah.
But with writing, we'll start off easy. We'll start off with writing. I know I told you this was going to be a conversation, but what happens with Francesca, she's so sweet, so what she does is she deflects everything. But now I have you in the hot seat, so you can't. Okay? So now I get to ask you questions, and you have to answer them because it's the law.
Okay.
So, every book that I've read of yours, and we wrote a screenplay together, two of us for Weetsy Bat, which is one of the greatest experiences of my life, and I learned so much, and we're still working on getting it made, and it's going to happen. But you, write these sentences that, destroy me, right? I think a lot of us who love Francesca feel that same way. It's like you just, want to swim in them, and, you read them again and again. Sentences, paragraphs. There's a couple I want to talk about your writing process. So there's one in here where you're talking about a student, right, who's leaving. It's really simple. The student sounds like a little bit of a dick. And she was being difficult, and she basically leaves your class or storms out of your class.
Oh, yeah.
And you say that she got up and left the room, dragging my reputation and evaluation points with her like a clattering string of tin cans. That's fucking brilliant. And then there's another one, which
only one student I ever had.
Right, one bad student.
The rest of them.
And then you have another line, which is one of the greatest lines I've ever read. It said, he sighed heavily with animal intuition. You're talking about your dog, Teddy. Okay, so basically, to set this up, Francesca's about to go to college for the first time, and her parents sit her down, and they have something they want to tell her. And so she says, it was summer, and the air lingered like a muse's breath on my skin. But I still clung to my dog, Teddy, for warmth. He sighed heavily with animal intuition, and his heart thudded against my hand. Irises filled the blue and white Delft vase, their silky petals ridged with veins like those showing beneath the surface of my own thin wrist skin. I have cancer, my father said. Fuck. It's that's what you do. You lull us, right? And like a lullaby, and then you stab us in the heart. So my question is to you, as from writer to writer, is, and I know there's other writers here, is when I write, I feel like I have a rock and a piece of paper, and I'm slamming it against it, trying to make something of, whatever, and just beating it until it's a sentence. And I feel like when you put pen to paper, butterflies fly out. So you make it feel really effortless. So that's my question. When you put pen to paper, do butterflies fly out?
It's so interesting because and I'm not deflecting, I'm really not, but this is true. Whenever I talk to Elgin, he speaks in these metaphors like this all the time. Just metaphor, and I can't speak in them. I can write in them, though. So when I'm writing, they do tend to flow, just because I've done it for so long. Of course, I revise, and hopefully they get better.
Right.
But and I revise a lot. But metaphor, that is a language that I'm used to and comfortable with. But again, it's more, I think it is for you, I feel like when you speak, that just happens, right? You don't sit there and go,
it's
I'm going to say
something. Yeah.
So I think it's just how it processes for me.
That's why we make a good team.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then now, so we got the easy question out of the way. Let's talk about death. So there's so much death in this book.
Yeah.
The death of your dad, the death of your mom, the death of David Bowie. That's the catalyst of this book. Actually, when we first started talking about this, and you told me that it was going to be based on, you actually talked about it in the book too, that it was going to be based kind of like the spine was going to be David Bowie.
Yeah.
How did that change into this?
So when David Bowie died, this is the story in the book, but when David Bowie died, I had this kind of epiphany, and it was funny because anybody else, I know at least one of you had this experience too. Anybody else here had like something happen creatively to them when David Bowie died? So it was a very strange experience where I felt, and I'm a fan, but I'm not like somebody that followed everything, you know. I just realized looking back after he died how many songs did affect me. So anyway, it just kind of was the as you say, catalyst that opened the door for me to start writing the memoir. And I based a lot of it on him specifically, but then as I revised it, became more a thread that wove through rather than about him.
Right.
So I went through quite a lot of incarnations, actually, with the focus being different things. But, yeah.
How did you, because you talk about in here, because when I was a kid, like death, I always thought about death. Like I always thought about death. And in here you talk about being a third grader, like thinking about your dad dying, which isn't normal for a third grader to worry about those things. Like how does that, I mean, I know this is one of those questions you get answered and it's like no real easy way to answer, but what does death play? It's in so much of your work.
Yeah, I think it's that inciting incident where my dad, because he was so much older than my mom, for whatever reason, and probably had a lot of anxiety about it that wasn't spoken of. It's just, I was aware of it the way a sensitive kid is, right? And I was picking up that fear, and so I thought about it a lot. It mostly just about him. It wasn't so much other people, or, you know, it was really focused on him. And then after he died, I don't know. I mean, I think it's really just that relationship, because I was so close to him, and I felt that. And actually, then I think it transferred, after his death, it transferred to my own fears about that and my own illnesses and things like that. So, yeah.
So how does that work when you're like a mom? Because then that transfers because you have kids that you're... I just don't let my brain worry about that. Right.
It's the one place where I'm really good and disciplined.
That's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I won't ask anymore.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, with that, like with your, because I think about with death, and I know when the people close to me have died, and including my parents, in some ways it kind of frees you up a little bit, because it's weird. It's like the worst thing to happen to you, but at the same time it's like such a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that with both their deaths. With my dad, I felt kind of, I felt a lightness because he had been ill, so when he passed away, I felt like I was going to be able to live my life in some ways more fully without that fear. And it got complicated along the way, but there was that. And then when my mom passed away, it was a really beautiful experience. I talk about it like almost similar to the birth of my children, as strange as that sounds, but it was a really spiritual and beautiful experience. So, and it made me feel a lot more brave about life in general after that.
How do you deal, with that? With death comes trauma, which so much of this is about, which is part of you being so honest and raw and real. How do you, because that's what happens, right? Like our parents, it's like our great-great-grandparents had trauma, and they pass it down to us.
Yeah, I believe that.
And then it just keeps going on and on and on, and it lives in us. Like, how do you stop from doing that? How do you continue to be an artist and write great, visceral, raw, real stuff, but then also be a functioning human being that's in charge of, like, other human beings?
I think that is how, though. I think that is how. I think that like my kids don't really read my books or really pay that much attention to my career. I think they respect that I'm creative and that I make money through art, but they're not focused on it. So I use it for me as the place where I process all those dark things. And then there's Francesca the mom, where I don't need to, it's all kind of compartmentalized in a way. So I think that's how. And I think it for me, it's therapeutic. So I hope it makes me a better person, mom, whatever.
Right, because you have some place to put it.
Yeah.
But how do you do, because I know of like trying, like our whole goal, right, is to be better and happier and better to the people around us.
Yeah.
But then when you're an artist, I become afraid of like, oh, I want to heal and get better, but only so much better. You know what I mean? Like I want to lose what's fucked up about me because I'm afraid then who will I be?
No, that actually is something my dad taught me, because my dad was really happy in his marriage to my mom, and as an artist and as a teacher. And I think, but he always was very creative at the same time, and he believes strongly, almost as a political statement, like you don't have to be miserable to do it. And I think in a practical sense, the way to do that is to channel stress. So you could be, there's so much, maybe not trauma that we reach that place in our lives where we're more at peace, but there's still so much stress in the world, right? So there's always that inspiration if you're looking. So I don't think we need to make ourselves, the goal I think should be to be as happy as possible, but to process everything darker through the creative work. Which
do you
I know.
Feel like you're at peace? Do you feel like more at peace? Okay.
but
who are you right now?
But I feel like I'm much more at peace when I'm creating something.
Right, totally. Right.
So whatever it is, just being active in that way.
Well, so just like with muses, because obviously you talk a lot about muses in here too, and how important your mom was to your dad in that way, where sometimes it seemed like there wasn't even room for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge piece of the story, and the role of the muse versus being an artist versus being a muse. And the kind of, my goal was always like, why can't I be the muse? Well, I can't be, so I'm going to be the artist.
Which is
cool. And
cooler.
of course, now I really appreciate that.
Right.
But I think, what about you with that relationship?
She's deflecting.
Well, your muse is sitting.
My muse is sitting here. What's up, baby? It is important. But then she's also like, I don't think I'm her muse. I don't think I'm her
muse.
He? I don't think so. I don't know. Well, look at your shoes. My wife's a shoe designer, by the way, and she's also sitting back there. Well, it's also, your muse can be different things, right? Like your muse is now, obviously Los Angeles is a muse to you, which is amazing.
I talk about that a lot, for sure, place. I talk about teachers, I talk about books, I talk about, I get friends and family. So I think, she can be everywhere, right?
Right. Weetsy Bat, obviously.
Yeah, right. I talk about the alter ego as the muse. So,
right. What's your muse now? Like I'm not going to answer for you. What's your muse now, Francesca?
The people close to me.
Yeah, right. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, we talked about, let's talk about life. How did having kids change you as an artist? I know I'm sure it changed you as like a human being, but how did it change, or as both?
Yeah. As an artist, that's a good question. Well, I wrote The Guarding the Moon, which is about my daughter's first year as a mom. And I actually, when that book came out, I brought her here. She was like this big and sat on my lap, and we did a reading here, which is so
That's
cool.
So awesome.
So I had that inspiration. But I'm kind of drawing a blank on how it changed me as an artist. I think I kind of keep them somewhat separately, except in terms of being inspired by the love I feel. But as a person, for sure. For a person, because you really have to confront, your shadow in a different way, and how is that going to affect these people? And unfortunately, it does. No matter what you do. So, but I try to stay really conscious about it, at least, and talk openly with my kids a lot about stuff. So, and they're great. I mean, they've somehow come out really well.
Well, because they have an awesome person for a mom, a motherfucking bomb for a mom. So because you talk about here on page 176, to talk about your amazing writing, the way you describe after Jasmine was born, your daughter. It says, the baby was placed on my chest. Nothing else mattered. My heart cracked open like a pomegranate, spilling shiny red bittersweet seeds, like blood that had been turned to light.
I was like that.
Yeah, it's
and she had this like perfect like round head, and so I still always talk about how I still, she drive her crazy because she's 18, and I still talk about the baby's head.
Right. So blood turning to light, like that sounds like some sort of healing. Did you feel healed?
Oh, yeah. Oh, completely. Like, I had lots of struggles with my relationship with my body in my whole life. And when I had my daughter, it was like, all of a sudden, I'm just like, I'm so awesome. My body was just so awesome. It did this thing. And that I was just so proud of myself, So. But, then I went back to my craziness. But no, in that moment, it was really, and still, I think, because I felt just so lucky, and it was a struggle. I had a couple of miscarriages. I talk about them in the book, and so it and I was older, but it was worth every bit. Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same way of being healed, right? It's like that same. Because I think about that as you go. I think as you live long enough, and like the world just kicks you enough in the throat, and then after a while, like you stop feeling things. And so that's what I think about when I think about being a parent or deciding to try to be a parent, is to feel things again, right? To be able to feel joy, to feel things that we have to protect ourselves from in the world, which is also fucking terrifying because then you have to feel things again.
Yeah, I mean, but wonderful, right? I mean, you do go back through your life. I think I think it was a little easier for me with my son and my daughter because hadn't experienced the traumas that boys experience, right? So I could be with my daughter. But luckily, she actually kind of had an easier time with a lot of it than I did. I think partly just there's so much more awareness in the culture too.
Right.
I mean, she wrote this poem about body image that just blew my mind, and I was like, I never even saw these issues that she's writing poetry. So I think I don't know, these kids, they just come from somewhere, and it's just.
So when you see them being healthy and sane, do you feel part of you gets healed, or do you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do you visit your parents again through that, like their failings, their what they did right?
Yeah, I mean, this book is some of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like looking at. But sure, I have more compassion for them because it's so hard to do it. So, I feel like, they were imperfect. Who is not?
Right.
Who is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about the chapters in here that freaked me the fuck out. The decluttering. When you're talking about decluttering your life, that stressed me the fuck out. Like, my jaw was clenched the whole time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how I felt starting it. And now it's like my favorite thing.
Is it really?
Yeah, but it's still hard. It's not natural to me, but yeah. So I had my mom's, after she passed away, a lot of her stuff crowding my house, and I just I'm not good at organizing anyway. And then Greg was helping me to clear it, and at first I was so resistant to it, and then by the end I was throwing like boxes full of journals into a dumpster like this and laughing hysterically. And then I told some people, and they're like, "You threw what? You threw your journals away?"
Crazy.
But like,
and
I don't
art
know.
and books.
Yeah, I threw away a lot of stuff.
Because when people you love die, it's like I have a grocery list that my mom wrote, like with little sideways slanted writing. That's just like a religious relic.
Yeah, I know, and that's beautiful. And for some people, I mean, I don't recommend everyone do it. I just, for me, at that phase of my life.
Did you feel like it was ghost? Like, what was it? Like, what did you feel? What do you feel free of now?
I thought about my kids, and I thought about what is it going to be like for them when I die, and they have to throw out all this stuff like I had to do, and it's awful.
Right.
So it's hard. So I was like, I don't want them to do that. So if I can do that, that was the biggest motivation.
Right.
And then it just felt, I could think more clearly, and I just
you talk
felt,
about that. And you feel like you could write better.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right. That's crazy. Still freaks me the fuck.
Well, and then there's the book. Sorry, I'm just blanking on it. the book about this.
Oh, I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So The Art of Tidying Up. Is that what it's called? The Art of... Anyway, where you get rid of stuff.
Yeah,
So
you throw shit out.
It's a really good book. But she talks about the feeling of the terrible feeling that you get afterwards, and then you know you did it right. Because I have this shirt.
What?
That I have this shirt that I threw away, and I still go like sick to myself. Like I had this kimono that I threw away.
Like you feel sick to your stomach that it's gone. You don't have it.
It's gone. I want it back. It's mostly with the clothes. I had this thing.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your relationship to clothes.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing we were writing Weetzie Bat together was the description. You could describe every single thing she was wearing in every scene. And then I had to be like, well, we can't have like a whole paragraph about just her. Yeah.
I know, that's my favorite part to do. Yeah, I do. I know what she wears in every scene. And then the joke that is in this book, I remember what I wore like on my 12th birthday.
And do you really? Because you say it, so you really do.
No, I actually can remember. Like you say a date, not a date maybe, but an event, and my entire life I can remember. It's weird. I don't have a good memory about I just remember clothes or weird random things. But yeah, that's the picture that I get.
And then you threw away your engineer boots.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually sold them, and someone I know bought them.
No way.
Yeah. Pony's not here. Is Pony here? Pony bought them, and I knew Pony, and it was weird. And how do I know that?
Did she know they were your boots, or?
I think no.
Okay.
No, and I think the person who owned the store told me that they bought them. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's cool. If I'd known, I would have just gone around you and just bought all your stuff after you and picked it up.
Well, I know, and if there's a movie, like we can't dress her in the
see?
originals.
That's sad now. That's what's so cool of reading this, like I said, of knowing you, but then also knowing Weetzie Bat so well and spending so much time, even with your parents, because you do something really interesting. And I guess, I don't know if I'm near, if you guys can still hear, if I'm not near the microphone. Feels weird to hear my voice amplified. But, I feel like I know you so well and your parents so well and all of that through working on Weetzie Bat. It's like the same thing we're saying about using trauma as almost like sort of a mask. You've always been able to tell the truth. So I made a movie, and it was about me and my friend, and we left our homes and we started this gang together. And then I tried to write that and became all weird. And then so I turned us into two 15-year-old girls, and all of a sudden I could be totally honest. I could talk about how I loved my friends, my friend, that I could talk about all that stuff. So I could be more truthful by saying something kind of fictional. And you've been able to do that through magical realism.
Yes, totally.
And through all of your stories, because with Weetzie is you, and even this, it's like all so much is just you in so many of your books. So what made you write this way now, and what was different?
So first of all I want to say, Little Birds is the movie, so you have to see that movie because it's amazing. And that's how I met Elgin, because I saw it, and I tweeted to him that I loved it, and then he tweeted back, or that
I was on Twitter for like a week, because Twitter's awful. Twitter
he's never
sucks.
on Twitter.
And the greatest thing happened to me, literally, I was just like, Francisca Lia Block. And I looked at my bookcase, and there was like 3 books there, because The Hanged Man was the first book that I read. It wasn't Weetzie like most people. And then I bought everything else after, and I was like, oh my God, Twitter's amazing. That was the only good thing to happen to me on Twitter, and then now I'm totally off. It's
great. So anyway, so I fell in love with that movie, and then we met and talked about this project. But and
then what's gone on, and we, so we see each other just too rarely, but then we'll talk to each other. I was in New York, miserable at an event, like wanting to die, and walk into traffic, and it was like an advertising thing or something. Unless anyone from FX is here, and then it was great, and I'm so thankful. But and then my phone rang or vibrated, and it was you, and it was just like every time we talk, it's just like the angels calling. It's like amazing. It's cool. And then I went off, and it was great. Yeah.
I forget the question now, but it was about.
It was brilliant. The question was brilliant.
It was about Weetzie.
It was about being able to tell the truth through.
So in the poetry class I'm taking now, and I talk about this a lot, but my teacher talks about the difference between truth and fact, and how actually there's fact, but literature elevates it to truth, changes it, and it becomes truth through abstraction or what you did with Little Birds, right? By changing the characters to girls, you were able to get at the deeper truth of the story, right? So I love fiction for that reason, and poetry for that reason. For this, it was harder because I didn't have that, but because I had interestingly written these stories as fiction for so many years, it was kind of meta. It was like now I'm writing the truth based on the fiction, so it was an easier way in. But in general, I think I tend towards fiction over nonfiction because of that. As you say, the metaphor makes it a little easier for me to approach it. Like, I tried to write a more autobiographical story about my life when I was younger, and it didn't work at all. So then I had to revise it with some more distance. I think you need a little distance.
You do. What made you write this now, then?
I have a few people here who encouraged me to write it. One, two, oops, sorry. I see another. I was kind of stuck, and just really smart people kept saying, I think this would be something you should think about, and I didn't know how, or, I didn't know if people would be interested. I don't know. It just seemed...
And they're saying you should do a memoir? They're saying you should do like a
memoir.
Book on writing. Okay.
Well, and a book on writing. Okay. So I had these two ideas, and then I was trying to figure out, like, how are they related? And then I ended up doing the memoir part first and then fitting the cool. writing guide. And it fit really well because the questions were sort of already part of my thinking. So they kind of meshed. But so I decided to do it kind of that way. But then the more I got into it, the more I realized that I have this really strong feeling about writing as a healing force and art as a healing force. And I thought this is the best way I can convey that message to the world. Yeah. So more than in fiction. So that was kind of, once it started to flow, I got really excited about that part of it. And I hope that's the main thing, the main takeaway from it.
I think that's with most of your writing, though, because you do it to heal yourself, but it heals so many people.
I hope so. I mean, I think it always fascinates me when somebody will say that, you know, like that, how it affected them. So, but this is maybe a little more like concrete guide to how to do that. And where I kind of take the role of the teacher or saying, encouraging that creative expression.
I had this woman, Joan Darling, who's a mentor to me about directing, and she said, if you want your actor to give you 50%, you have to give like 150% of yourself.
Oh,
that's exactly
great.
What you do in there. Like, you give so much of yourself, and then you prompt people to do that too.
That's fantastic.
You have this really cool quote in there about how you want to write. And it's with one of these dudes' names, Thorn, who one day I'm going to find. But, where is it? What page is it? I'll find it. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Oh, here we go. You're seeing X, right? Tonight you come on the Thorn. And it says, on stage, Exene bent at the waist like a broken doll, leaned into wail with John Doe. Their voices pure punk rock sex. You said, I want to write prose that makes people feel like this, I told Thorn. Visceral, to make you shake and sweat like music does. And that's how you fucking write. That's what you do for people.
Thank
it's
you.
true.
That's the goal. I mean, I don't know if I can ever get there, but that's always the goal. And I remember in that actual scenario, just like thinking, how do you do that? What is that? And I don't think you do music, so I don't know if it's ever possible, because it's so much in your body, the music, as opposed to your mind.
Well, that's what's interesting about the way that you write, because I don't know if it's just being like a dumb dude, but when I write, it's just like I said, it's like a rock, and you try to make it as stark as possible. You know what I mean? It's trying to bear it down. With you do, it's like I never could. It's just like a bird and wings, and it's just it's just weird. So it is like a reflection of your soul. Not that you also don't have a really. Francisca is also tough as shit. Let me just say this right now. She's like a badass fairy, So I don't want to think there's also some concrete and rubble in there too, which makes you so special, But it is. It's like that's what we want to do. Is like how do you help people find their voice? Because I feel like I don't know how it happened. I just sort of like stumbled upon it because I've been writing probably like a lot of writers here since I was a kid and keeping journals. And as my friend and assistant Mara knows, I don't know anything about grammar or English, so she used to fix everything for me. And luckily screenwriting, it doesn't matter, but I still don't know what anything is. Then that became my voice, is half my ignorance. So how do you tell people, or how do you help them find their voice, or what is voice? Because you talk about it in the...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what comes, like what you just said, it's the imprint of the self. So it's finding, I just say, write the way it comes out naturally. Don't try to sound like anybody else. Don't try to second guess. Don't try to think, how people will receive it. Initially, just put down you.
Right.
Being the more you are. And then you go back and you start looking at it critically and go, okay, so yeah, maybe some of the grammatical stuff is an issue for me. So I'll have my assistant, or
thank you, Mara.
Yeah. Or maybe I don't use a lot of imagery, so that's something I could read this book, this writer that's really good with that. And so you start, but the initial voice is the self, really. And I think it's living, it's writing a lot, reading a lot, and living a lot.
Yeah.
And those three things create the voice.
So you say, because I was going to ask, is there a shortcut? Because I know when people try to write, it's like anything. It's like you're just trying to mimic what you love or what you read.
Yeah, which is great too. Voice, right? Which can be great. I mean, there's these, who is it that wrote down? Joan Didion wrote Hemingway, right? Yeah, copying down, like I even just a little passage from Virginia Woolf. If I just type it out, like I feel. So I think imitation is great in the beginning to just learn, but I think filling up with that and then putting it aside and just being like, I'm just going to do me and see what comes out of that. And I do think living your life, which doesn't mean you can't be 20 and have an amazing voice.
Right.
But I do think, and a lot of people at 20 have lived a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I do think the more experiences you can channel into that voice, the stronger it becomes.
What part does music play in that? Because I know when we were doing a Weetsy Bat song list together, it was like so cool. It was like so many of the same things, and it was rad. Yeah.
It's interesting because someone was asking me about my influences, and I have tons of literary influences, but in terms of living people, it's almost all musicians. So, and I hadn't even thought of that consciously, but I was like writing a list of them, and it was almost all. So I think that it's the rhythm, it's the raw emotion, it's the, what else? I don't know. You know more about music. I feel like it's my experience going to hear these bands and, the history of that for me. So, but for whatever reason, it's a huge part of the
I think
work,
ethics too, because I think it's two things. So I think it's definitely rhythm. It's the rawness. It's like when there's a shot in the project I was doing, and it was really cool when the editor did the first take of it, and it's in Little Birds when they're just running around wild, these two young girls, and it was amazing. It was awesome. It felt so real. Like I captured it. And then she did the final pass, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, what changed from this scene? And it was that you do this thing in editing, if you're good, where you make all the sounds sound the same. And before it had all been chopped up.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, we got to go back to chopped up, because that's what feels right to me. It feels like Husker Du. It feels like something like, and that's like your music, your writing is so melodious. Melodious? How do you say the word? Melodious?
Yeah.
We're going to say it's that. But at the same time it's like Weetsy Bat is that way, right? But it also has this like fucking gristle and bone to it at the same time.
Yeah, I hope I like that. Sounds good.
It does. There's no question there. That's just a fact. That's just it.
But I know nothing about music really. Like I know what I like, but I'm totally not musical. My poor daughter, my ex and I both can't carry a tune at all, and we would try to sing her lullabies, and she's quite musical, and she'd just be like, "Oh my God, stop!" So I don't know. It's just the feeling of it. Touches me in a different way. I mean, just the emotions, right? I cry at books too, but I hear a certain song and I'm like immediately in a different place and tears pouring down my face.
Right.
So,
that's crazy how art can do that. Like in real life, it's like so hard to touch those things sometimes, and then art just has this like fucking sneaky way in.
I know.
Yeah. Who has questions for Francesca?
And Elgin.
Yeah, that was great.
She's deflecting.
No, no, I'm not.
So could you talk a little bit more about witnessing your mom's death and how
Oh yeah, yes, how witnessing my mom's death helped me to not fear death. I write about it a lot in there, so I'll try to kind of paraphrase, but I think it was that, it was very peaceful for her. So, and my brother was on one side and I was on the other side, and we were able to communicate everything that we felt, our love for her, and she was able to communicate it back. So I was very fortunate to have that experience. And it was, I guess it was just and then I heard her voice in my head speaking very clearly immediately afterwards for a few days. So I felt very connected to her. So for me personally, the experience was very beautiful. Now, my dad passed away in a hospital with tubes, so I didn't get that moment, and not everyone gets that moment. But if you're fortunate enough to have that moment, I think it can be incredibly healing. And I don't know what it means, like what's next or why, but I felt the energy continuing on. She was just comforting me, like just talking to me very, like everyday, comforting, warm sort of voice in my head. And so, yeah, nothing profound per se, but I had internalized her in whatever way you can talk about. Is that spirit? Is that just my imagination? Whatever, but it was still in me. So I do feel, when my kids were born, I didn't feel like, oh, hi, who are you? I felt like, oh, hi again. Oh my God, thank you for coming back. To finding me again. So that's my whole spiritual belief system is right there. It's like the love that I feel for certain people, it's just always there. It doesn't go away. So
it's beautiful.
Thanks.
In your opinion, what is it about, why is the act of writing so healing? What is it?
Yeah, I think yeah, right. I know you've experienced it, right, yourself, and I certainly have. There's a book, The Midnight Disease, that I recommend. It's about hypergraphia, and it's the inability to stop writing, which when we have writer's block, we're like, I want that. But this woman, she's a neurologist. She suffered a tragedy. She lost twins at birth, and she started just writing, and couldn't stop. And later she recovered and studied it, and it became this book. And did I say she was a neurologist previously? Anyway, so the idea is that there is a link between expressing, how you feel better just talking to someone, right? Therapy, talking to a friend. This is the next phase of that, which is, or maybe it's not as effective for some people, but when you don't have that person, you write it down. And there was proof that Holocaust survivors, the two things that helped them were writing their story and massage.
Oh, wow.
Which makes so much sense, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things. So I don't know about the science, but I feel in my brain, right? Who here feels in their brain, oh, relief, like I'm writing and I feel better. It's just, or whatever art form that you might have. Which isn't to say there aren't people that struggle with that. Not everyone gets that instant relief. Sometimes it causes more frustration, but the idea of telling a story, I think, is inherently healing in that way.
I feel sheer panic. Yeah, I do. I feel sheer fucking panic.
But do you feel better when it's done, or do you feel some relief?
Oh, yeah, and there's nothing better, right, when you get to go back and read something. Like, that's like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Getting it out is awful.
Like, do you feel
I also don't talk to therapy, or maybe those are connected somehow. I don't like massages. I don't like to be touched. Maybe there's like, I need to read the book again.
But I think that right. I talk about this. I make it sound easy, and for some people, it is really, really a painful process to just write. But I think that's because of chapter, I think it's for your 4, which is banish the critic, which
Yeah,
is
totally.
the reason it's painful. The only reason it's painful is because there's a part of you that's saying, like, it's not good, or what are people going to think, or they're going to give me 1 star on Goodreads. Better not write this book because I'm going to feel really bad. So you just say, shut up, go over there, shut up. You can come out later when I'm editing,
Right.
and you can, in a calm state, behaving yourself, and you can tell me what you think. But yeah, I think that's the key,
Right.
which makes it sound easier than it is. But I do think there's a piece of that.
Yeah, and it's
That's
beyond,
true.
it's all of that, but it's also your parents, like, you having fun and being open and them telling you to be quiet or
Right,
shut up or
exactly.
something, it's
Exactly.
like 3rd grade being put, it's like so much stuff that's so inside of us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the whole premise of this book is my dad saying "you are a writer" to me when I was in college, yelling it to me while he was very sick over the phone in the dorms while I'm crying because the teacher told me I wasn't, they didn't like my poem. So who gets that? I was super lucky.
Yeah.
So this is what my version of like paying it forward with this book. So
To all of
hopefully
us.
doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, hope.
yeah. Who else has a question? Secret man.
Oh yeah.
Aw, thanks, man. What was it like working together?
So the thing is, like, I've been writing this script I'm not exaggerating, I started in 1986. In 1986, before the book came out, and I had boxes, talking about things I threw away, boxes in my living room of, like, versions of it, and I just kept trying. I don't know, I just never gave up, I just kept trying. And then, like, I finally get to this point that I think it's pretty good, and I give it to Elgin, and Elgin is, like, in 2 weeks, just like, boom, 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 fix the whole thing, and everyone read it, and they're like, this is amazing.
No, that's not
And no, it is true. It is true. It is true. Deflect. No, now you are. No. I'm older, and you can listen.
Although our birthdays, that's right, it's true. All right. Damn it.
But anyway, yeah, I think that he took, I don't know exactly what you did. I'm studying screenwriting right now, so I think it has something to do. You said talk to me about the emotional beats,
Right.
and I thought, but they're there, but they were there in my head.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
they
right.
weren't there for the producer, or
Right.
like so there were those things, and then there was the cause and effect, I feel like, and the action. I don't know, and it just had a muscularity that you gave it, and so I just think it came alive. I'm not exactly sure
Right.
what it was. What do you think? I mean,
I think I don't know. I think it was just some pixie dust. I don't know. Maybe, like I don't know. Because it was all there. Is literally. Remember, I said it was just going to be like Quezon. It was going to be like Vietnam. I was going to go there and just hatchet it up. And you're like, okay. But sometimes I think it was the same way of like knowing you and being close, right? And then knowing Weetsy Bat and knowing all of the books of Weetsy Bat. And then, and with everything, is like as artists, right? We can't help not tell our story with everything that we do, which maybe we're just self-involved. I don't know what it is, but but some of you working on something, you kind of like bleed into it as well.
Yeah,
so I think it was that, and just us being close and you giving me the space, like also like
and also I think you put in things that I told you about my family,
exactly.
or that are in some of the other books earlier on that she that set the stage
Completely.
for it. So I think that was it. But
I'm just reading about your dad, just doing
you
these
put more,
deep Google searches on your dad. You know what I mean? It was just awesome. Watching Forbidden Planet. Her dad was also badass, as was your mom. And you talk about muses, like that's really interesting. And Mara actually read the book and loved the book, and she was talking about it, about how even with muses, right? Like usually it's about after Little Birds, everyone's like, oh, this is so amazing. One of the actors is like, oh, she's your muse, and that felt so weird and like kind of misogynistic to me. It just felt weird, and but with your dad is like, but your mom kind of put aside her own artistic stuff to be his muse.
Yeah, for sure, which can be the danger of it.
Right.
And what I saw and what I both admired and was afraid of becoming, or not becoming, but of losing that. I don't know. I just identified more with my father in that way, as like the artist.
And you went out and found your own muses.
Yeah,
which is cool.
yeah. You can. Yeah.
Bunch of dudes are gonna get their ass kicked one day. Who else has questions for Francesca?
It's more of a comment about Weetsy, which is I think it could be a Netflix series because you have all 5 seasons already.
That's true.
You got 8 episodes out of.
Can you call them? And and yeah, I agree. I mean, I think.
There you go.
And now, and he's the perfect showrunner because he already is doing that. Yeah, we got it. We can do this
We can do this, done.
No,
tomorrow.
Right now, we're.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
you wrote all of those books at a time when the way entertainment is now didn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's almost like even though those books are older now, it's like this is their time, weirdly enough.
I mean, it would be.
People are looking for that type of
Yeah.
material to do all of that streaming entertainment. And
Maybe-
it's all here. You don't have to
Yeah.
expand it. You don't have to change it really.
Maybe
For
after
your
we
5 seasons.
after we get the featured, then
Right.
they'll do it. That'd be the dream, right?
But no, it's true. It's how the world has. That's what I feel like growing up punk rock, right? Is like the whole world is caught up with you. Even now, like everyone's all about punching Nazis in the face. Like we did that 20 years ago, and everyone thought we were thugs. You know what I mean? It's like everyone else is caught up. And like there's this album by this band called Millions of Dead Cops. Came out in 1982, and it talked about trans rights. It talked about police brutality. It talked about it was just crazy. I'm a kid. I'm like, oh, these are my values now.
Right.
And then it took the world however many years to catch up to it.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah.
It's wild. So basically the same thing with Weetzie Bat. Like you put it out there, and which is beautiful because we make art. I say this all the time. You've heard me say it ad nauseum, but it's like you make art because you have to get rid of all this stuff inside you, right? Because you're so in pain and fucked up, and you have to let it out. And then when someone responds, it's like this. You like cry in the dark, and then someone cries back. It's like the greatest feeling in the world. And you've had this whole generation after generation like cry back.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Yeah, I feel like maybe the best thing about my career has been that, right? I've met my friends. This is how I met like 90% of you guys, like is through my work. I mean, how fortunate. So the more you can put out that, or, that message, like you say, and receive, it's amazing. And not being afraid to do it, because you're going to get people that don't get you, and that'll say all kinds of stuff, but you get all these people that do.
That do, right. More questions?
Hi, Kate.
You talked a lot about motherhood and how that affected you, if it healed you, but I'm kind of curious, did you feel like you had to heal your trauma to a certain extent before you could take on motherhood? Because at least for me, I think it's almost irresponsible.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know if that's like
Right.
someone else when you're still
I mean, the thing is, it never is going to be perfect. You're always going to have more, I feel. I've been in therapy, most of my life, but I didn't find my amazing therapist until after I had my kids, actually. I wish I had. But I think that it's an ongoing process. And I think that what my therapist has taught me is a lot of the healing. There's always going to be what she calls misattunements. So you're going to have conflicts. You just are. Your kid's going to be, you're going to have issues with your kid, but it's able to repair them quickly. Able to say, wow, that's my stuff. I love you. I'm sorry. So I think she made me feel that it is safe to be imperfect, and that it's okay because we are, and that as long as you're on a journey to continue to work on yourself, it's okay. So I don't believe you have to be. I mean, I don't think it's possible, right? But being aware, the fact that you even are asking the question shows like so much self-awareness, right? I mean,
yeah. Another question? More questions? Who's got questions?
So, what takes so long to get this
to get.
You should
to get
tell
it
them
made?
about the whole version. I mean, it's in the book, but tell them all the versions you've been through.
Yeah, so the one that it was optioned by lots of different people. I wrote a version for Fox Searchlight that I had notes and direction that didn't feel, it was a different kind of direction. I did it for another, Amblin had a script. I met with David Lynch. Or Tim Burton's company was interested. All these other people were interested, and it didn't go through, for whatever reason. So every time I would just be like, okay, there's got to be because people will also say to me, it's sort of a no-brainer. I mean, it's a low-budget movie. People like the book, it's, so I don't know why, but it hasn't been quite the right situation yet. But I still feel maybe it's also the timing now, like, you know, what's going on for women in Hollywood too, which he's a huge proponent. I mean, your whole crew was women for Little Birds, and I think even in
all the heads, yeah, definitely.
So I mean, how amazing! Talk about ahead of your time. So anyway, so I just think it's timing, and I don't know. Hopefully, it'll also happen. So. Yeah.
But you haven't given up.
Yeah, that's the point of it.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of just see it, so I don't know. I'm not even trying to not give it up. It's just there. And I talk about in the book about this. I went to a psychic, and she said when I was really young, and she goes, "There's this big project of," and I've hardly gone to any, just a couple of times. She said, "There's this big project of yours that won't happen until you completely give up on it." And of course, the problem with that is that every time I'll give up on it, and then something happens, and I get excited, and then I go, "Oh, I guess not going to happen." So
I just have to not tell you when good things are happening.
Yeah,
about
I
it.
just decided I'm going to just enjoy every little weird, thing that happens around it, and not be afraid.
I think one of the things too with the script too, because even you brought it up because you talked about producers. That was the other thing, I don't know if you remember, that we talked about is like not being scared and also not writing it for anybody.
Yeah.
So it's like how to get the best version, but also I think you'd been through it so much. Also trying to get back to you of like not giving a fuck, just getting on the paper of how things, and that's why I think it's like so great now because it's just you.
And I think I do that pretty well with fiction, but because I haven't had a film produced, I'm more like scared. Well, I have to try to do this
Everyone
or that.
Does. That's just the game. Yeah.
But I do believe in that in terms of for writing in general is to be true to your own vision of it.
Let the world come to you.
Yeah. I like that.
Your question?
Oh, yeah, well, since if you ever sit down and you think you're going to write about a specific thing you want to interpret or a specific thing, and then you start writing and it ends up turning into something completely different, and how do you trust that?
I think that allow it. And then look at it and see because I think your subconscious is kind of trying to tell you something when that happens, and that may very well be the project to work on, but it also may be that the project you're currently working on will benefit from that. Like I had a student today, she's been working with me for maybe 2 years on this novel, and it's a kind of historical novel, and it's good, solid, but I never really felt her or the emotions of it. And she finally, after like a couple of years, she read this, and then she went and brought in an essay about this very personal stuff. And it was so good, and it was so emotional. And I told her, all this energy that you have in that piece will feed this novel. Don't give up on the novel per se, but put all that. So I talk a lot about writing those important emotional scenes from your life. I'm not sure that's where what you're talking about, but wherever your heart is, and then seeing how they might fit or enhance the other project, or maybe take over, and be the project.
There are a lot of people out there living with complete loss and trauma. People who are here on our streets with the horrible wars and psychic trauma that we can't even imagine. A lot of us have fought our own wars, and we're with that mutual respect now of respecting the trauma of another person as we're working through our own trauma, and not making women bear that burden. So you mentioned how much badass she can be. Can you talk about trauma? And I know that the latest trauma studies say that even resistance in the most hopeless situation, rather than just laying down and taking things like a job, just even an ounce of resistance psychologically benefits a trauma victim more than, letting the guy do what he needs to do.
I mean, I feel like you know more about that topic than I do, honestly. I don't. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I don't. I mean, I don't
about
know.
that, or what do you mean? What's the question?
Yeah, what's the exact?
Your work is so good, and your wisdom is so beautifully feminine, and so right for the age, and so right for what we're going through now. There is so much trauma out there in the world, mentors, and I just think
Yeah.
the wisdom that you have to
Yeah.
express.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think really the only thing that I can impart is my own experience, and my own experience is it sounds like a cliche, but writing did actually save my life. So it wasn't, I wasn't out there in the trenches per se like Elgin. I was home at my computer or with my kids, but for me the fight has been through writing and also through teaching and hopefully helping other people heal. I mean, I learned a lot of this from my therapist as well, because she's a woman sitting in a room all day long talking to people and profoundly healing them. So we all can do it our own way, I guess, is the answer. If you can be out there fighting it, if you can be in your own environment fighting that way, facing it and expressing it.
Well, I mean, that's what you do. I mean, even in this, it's like, so I talk about being so raw and honest, right? Like, you talk about your fears, you talk about your demons, you talk about how they still flare up constantly.
Yeah.
But you do that, and it's like how we started. It's like, and then you bleed that out, and then someone sees that, we read that, and then we're like, fuck, I'm not alone. And already you're a little bit healed.
I hope so. I mean, I do think it's like for me putting this book out there, I was really scared at the reaction at first because it is so personal. And then I thought, well, I'm so vulnerable now that what can you really hit me with? It's like all there. So, and then if anything,
that's your spark of resistance. That's your spark of resistance.
And then someone else will go, oh wait, I had that happen to me too. So.
Yeah. See, she's motherfucking badass. Any other questions?
It can be also more
Bless you.
personal. Bless you. It can be more personal about your own work too. Yeah.
It's clear, like, you love LA, right? Like, I was living in a small town in Virginia and stuff, and they were moved to LA. Do you go out, like, thinking, like, as you're going through LA, are you like, yeah, I'm going to set this thing up at the park, or do you, like, sit down and start writing and are like, oh, yeah, like, how does that...
I think just from living here my whole life, it just kind of naturally, comes out. But when I was younger, I would spend a lot of time roaming, kind of like discovering, and I think that's reflected in some of my earlier work. Like I had a gentleman the Penn Writers Fellows came to my house last night. There's 5 of these people, they're really awesome, and just to chat about writing. And this one gentleman said, he'll go and see from Compton, and he'll sit on the curb and watch the prostitutes and write about it. And he's like, do you do stuff like that? And I'm like, God, you're so cool. Like, I wish I did that. I sit in my computer and go, let me think about my past. So the more you can get out there and like engage, the better, for sure. You can't always do it. But anyway, so I think, but for me, because I've lived here forever, it just naturally calls up a lot of imagery and memories. So.
Yeah, you spent all the years out there anyway before.
Yeah, when I was young, I did. I mean, I wasn't necessarily watching prostitutes on the curb, but, it's cool.
Right. But yeah, the same thing of like growing, and Greg and I were talking about earlier about living other places, and I grew up in a small town, and then you read LA in this magical way, and it's just like, but also you have to look for it. And then once you get here, you're like, oh, this is kind of just an ugly city.
Yeah, you have to look for it.
But you have to look for that magic.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful
and
about
anywhere,
Wixie
right?
Anywhere, yeah.
So.
That's actually how I found your writing. When I moved here, it was like, I do not love this city.
Right.
Find authors.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then
Oh,
she was
that's cool.
in a short film based on one of my short stories.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, one or two.
No?
But I wish I was.
You're not Katie?
No, parody.
Oh, I'm sorry. You look so
Yeah.
much like her. I love you too. Okay, sorry.
Any other questions for Francisca Lia Block?
It can be about your
Yes.
work too.
Hey, Francesca.
Hey.
So obviously I'm going to read the book. I'm really looking forward to it. But can you talk about time, making time to write, how
Oh,
you
yeah.
dive into your writing, like how you juggle.
And you have kids too, right?
There's so much that you do with your teaching, and I know you use some social media and
Yeah.
for other projects.
And I'm in school now. Did you know that?
What is going on? Break it down.
Like it's
Sleep?
Yeah, I mean, no, yes, I do. That's a big piece of it, right? Like just basic care, basic self-care, which is not that easy for me per se, but like making sure you do, get your meditation app and get your, be out in nature, have your dog therapy. I mean, this is how I do, whatever the massage, whatever are the things that sustain you, because you're pouring out all the time and you have to. And I'm just learning some of that stuff now, because I never really learned it. My mom didn't really do it, so I don't think the generation before mine particularly did that or taught. So I think we have to. So I don't know. It's just, and then I'm fortunate because I'm motivated by love a lot of my work and of my students and of course, my kids, and family and close friends. So I think if I had to do something that I hated, there's no way. But I'm fortunate to have that. So and then I think just very practical things. I don't know.
Do you set aside time? I mean, as we're always, as writers, are always trying to figure that out, right? Of like
set a time.
Set time, like What's your schedule?
I don't set aside time to write because it is like almost the fun part for me of it, so I'll sometimes not prioritize it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then and get to it because I like to do it, but I don't recommend that. Yeah, I mean, I recommend setting aside.
And how have you written like 100 million books, like a book a year?
Because it's the hypergraphic, it's the crazy stuff you talk about, right? Like if I'm feeling crazy, then that's a relief to it. So it gives me that relief. But yeah.
It's awesome. Another stupid question, but do you outline? Do you know what you're going to do when you get in?
No, I didn't for most of the beginning of my career, and now I do much more, and that's actually the questions that I write about in the book help with that. And I think there's a balance between doing it to a degree and not overdoing it so that you take the life out of it.
Right.
But I think it can expedite things for sure. So.
How many people here are writers? Can I ask?
Yeah,
how many people write?
And really raise your hand. Yeah, see? Awesome. I love her.
So what writer's questions do we have? We have her here. Like, I'm lucky. I can call her on the phone and ask stuff. So.
I have trauma about writing. I love telling stories. I'm great about amazing life and stuff. But I can't see how to write it. That's pain.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, what's the pain? Like, what happens in your mind? What's painful about it?
It's like I've had some things that were taken from me, some writing things and stolen from me.
Oh,
and that.
yeah.
Like, every time I sit down, I'm like, no, I'm thinking this way. I'm not going to write it down. It's just like...
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just goes for me, just going back to that thing of when you're in that place of the writing, it's just you and the story, and nothing else exists, and not the people that are that you're afraid might judge it or steal the idea or whatever. You can look at that rationally later, but this is that time. It's almost what Elgin said about like the kid playing, right? And nobody telling the kid that you can't play. Someone saying to the kid, go for it, play, enjoy it, just do it for you, and then later you can answer all those questions. But I think if you have the impulse to do it, there's a reason. Like, I'll say this to my students: if you come up to me and you have tears in your eyes or have that certain look in your eyes that I recognize and say to me, I really want to write this, I really want to write, you wouldn't do that unless it was pretty loud in there. It was you wouldn't raise your hand in a room, you know what I mean, and say it unless it was pretty strong. So then I go, you're a writer, so just write it. I mean, I can validate that just by that conversation, and you can see it. I make it sound simpler than it is, but I do think there's just like you playing in your in your world that you get to create, where you control everything. Which is why I like it.
Well, it's also the balance of it's like that kind of fantastical thing, and also just the blue collar, just sitting down and fucking doing it. You know what I mean? You just got to do it.
I mean, that Nike slogan, unfortunately, is kind of accurate. Yeah, or fortunately, whatever.
You can't say too far up there because you'll never get it done. So it's like that balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
So a writing question: how do you organize the monster? I mean, if you like tight kind of things and you like little things, and you're a child at this time and you like short, and how do you organize them all in a bunch?
I was talking to somebody about this earlier. Starting with poetry is how I started. Then short flash fiction, short stories, short novel, longer novel. So it's building blocks. It starts with the word, with the sentence, with the paragraph, with the story, and then it expands. And really and this is a lot in the book too, but there's a basic arc to all of those small components, and then there's an arc to the larger one. And it's really quite, it's less mystical than I think it sounds. It's really just building it slowly from the smaller to the larger. Yeah.
We have time for one more question, I just heard. No pressure. It better be amazing. Bring it, bro. Bring it.
What's been your relationship with your
That was good. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, follow it. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to be in a fairly in tune place to even know when it's, communicating with you. If you can get to that place, then I think it's pretty clear to follow it.
Yeah.
But,
do you have a line? Do you have a relationship with your gut? Do you feel? I mean,
now I do.
Yeah, right.
But there were periods in my life. If you read the book, you will see the relationships I was in where obviously I wasn't following what was good for me. I was very out of body almost.
Right.
So I've become more so that way through certain practices, through therapy, through blah blah, writing, through yoga, whatever, meditation. But I think if you can, it's harder for me. It's hard to get to that place, perhaps. But when you're in that place, I think it's pretty clear. Now I think I'm more conscious of it, and it helps to have people who love you say, guide you in that way, right? This is how we learn ideally from our parents, which we don't all get, but so you trust them to guide you, and then you start to trust yourself. So I think that is something we can learn later in life if we don't get it at that point, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah. Yes. No, that's it. Yeah, but it's hard to sometimes know, and I just know, even coming out here, and my wife knows that I feel sick to my stomach a lot. That's when and especially like here in this town, and then trying to make movies, and we'd have to go to things, and I'd come home feeling so sick. And other, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
feel like everyone else is there, and you're there, and then you realize. Because I had someone really smart in my life, who's just like, oh yeah, that's wrong, so don't do that. Go do the thing that you actually care about and love. Yeah.
And it helps to have the loving person guiding you that way, right? Like we can't always do it ourselves.
And thank you.
That's why we need each other.
Us. Yeah.
We all need each other. And that's the one thing I just want to say too, in terms of community. Like I think, first of all, I didn't say this because I was kind of nervous and overwhelmed, but I'm really grateful to you for doing this. I mean, seriously, and for everything, and for you guys for coming out, and it just means so much to me. And I want to also say that, and just the individual support you've given me in my life, and also I want to say, like, building that community of mutual support is really what we have to be doing now, especially, right? So I'm very, very appreciative of it. And if I can be that way for you guys in some capacity, please let me know.
Well, you have been. That's why we're all here, right? You have been. So thank you. Yeah. All right. But I want to thank you for sharing everything. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for tweeting at me that day. Thank you for letting me be part of the Weetzie Bat experience. And thank you for being my friend, because I get so proud. And I feel things. I talk about not feeling things. I felt so many things reading this book. So thank you for that.
Alden.
You're the bomb. And thank you guys so much. It's been great. And thank you, Skylight Books.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.